Hello Internet! It's Alex and James from Barefaced, and Barefaced has been around for over 15 years, making arguably the best bass cabs in the world, and also for the last 5 years the best guitar cabs in the world. And here we have not just the best small bass cab in the world, the 5 best small bass cabs in the world. They're quite small, but we have the 110, the 210, the Super Mini, Super Compact, and the Big Baby 3. These 4 are T versions of them, so these have the optional tweeters. The Big Baby 3 always has this large high frequency driver. We have the tweeter ones as our demo cabs, because if you turn the tweeter all the way down, they sound exactly the same as the ones without the tweeter. But we've been making bass cabs a long time, and we know that a large proportion of bassists don't need or want a tweeter, so we're not going to make you pay for it or carry the extra weight of a fairly chunky, expensive crossover and rather nice tweeter if you turn it off all the time. So, what's special about them? They've got great dispersion. This is a consistent theme with Barefaced cabs. They're high efficiency, lots of power handling, they can move a lot of air. The enclosures are stiff, but light and tough and very durable. As far as I know, they're almost all still in use. We've lost a few to floods. That seems to be the one thing that can destroy a Barefaced cab. But other than that, yeah, they keep running. So they're worth the money in the long term. They are expensive, but you get what you pay for. You've gigged quite a bit with them.
Yeah.
How long have you been here now?
Year and a half.
Year and a half. Become part of the furniture.
Yeah.
Yeah. So James plays bass in various bands.
Jazz.
Jazz bass, yes.
Not
Not jazz bands. That's one thing I did want to say. We're going to do a quick demo of these cabs, but it's just like the start of demoing what these can do, and we're going to play our sort of thing-ish. In terms of the musicians we have using Barefaced cabs, which are all over the world, all genres, all ages, all genders, I think now. We've become a lot more diverse. Some people think we're just rock cabs.
Yeah.
It's really nice in that we're kind of upsetting the norm in rock, because the tendency has been towards the big old stuff, and we can do it better. But there's a lot of jazz players, there's a lot of fusion, funk, soul, R&B, electronica. They're actually really cool. The more weird you want to get, the better our cabs can be for you, but also they're very good at certain old school sounds. So the difference between the 12s and the 10s is not that they're 12s and they're 10s, but that speaker, the 12XN, has been designed to be as accurate as possible, and it ended up being a 12 because that was the best way to get the output and efficiency and accuracy and dispersion, all the other things we wanted, transient response, so on and so forth. And these, we were going for more warmth, fatness, and just a cool coloration that worked well for bassists who didn't want absolute accuracy. So kind of picking the ideal coloured tone for bass, if you could say there is one ideal. But certainly it's a great starting point for adding colour. And that became the 10CR. It wasn't a 10 for a particular reason, it's just a 10 was the best way to get that sound. So it's not a 10-inch version and a 12-inch version, they're 2 distinct families, which we generally don't recommend mixing and matching. Some people do, but it's a bit unpredictable. The 10s we have found, and this kind of happens, it does happen with all speakers to a degree, but it's more obvious with a more coloured speaker. The more of them you add, the more coloured it gets, because you kind of add fatness and bigness and stuff. So you'll notice the difference between the 210 and the 110 in that, which is why the 110 also works quite well, very well, as a small cab if you want something smaller, or indeed less expensive than a Super Mini T, but you still want a fairly honest sound. Particularly if you're not cranking it as much, so if you're in a jazz context or whatever. Yeah. Well, shall we run through some sounds?
Yeah. Go for it. Okay.
I'll start, and then James is going to wave the bit of plywood around, and then we'll swap. Oh, so this is a cool bass. This is new to me, sort of birthday present. This is a Epiphone Jack Cassidy, which is based originally on the Gibson Les Paul signature bass, which they made a handful of in, I think, 400 in the 70s.
Right.
it's a really interesting instrument, and I play an acoustic bass guitar when writing at home, so I thought it might suit me. So let's run it clean. What cab are we in now?
We're in the 110T.
We're in the 110T. I'll try and stand out of the way of whichever speaker we're going through. Bear in mind, in terms of what's happening in the true lows, the mids will be translated pretty well by the mic that we have here, which is a large diaphragm condenser, about 8 feet from the cab, so it's quite a room sound. We're not close micing because we don't want to have a mic on each cab, and close mic isn't really the truth anyway. But yeah, in the low frequencies, the mic's going to have coloration, this room's going to have coloration, and your speaker's going to have a lot of coloration, you know. So us talking about what's happening in the lows after we've done this may actually be more useful than what you hear in the lows, but the mids and highs should translate pretty well, as they do in our guitar demos. So this bass line I came up with a week or two ago when I was writing a new song, and I appear to have come up with something that's really stupid to demo with because it's really hard to play, but it does cover a lot of the instrument and gets you a lot of different sounds. But it's amazingly distracting switching between cabs.
Yeah, can you hear what's going on while you're playing that as well?
Yeah, that one's louder. So the
Yeah.
reason the 210 is louder is because it's a 4 ohm load and the others are an 8 ohm load, plus it's an efficient cab. This is 95 dB sensitivity, this is 98, and these three are about 97 dB sensitivity, but that's just one number to represent a sort of graph approximately. What are you hearing in terms of the difference?
I can definitely hear how much faster and more accurate the 12s are.
Yeah.
When the 210 comes on after the 110, you really hear the change in like the mids.
It just goes,
mids.
doesn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah.
Kind of engulfs it.
It's thicker.
Yeah, it's like another speaker's come along and it's like hugging the first one.
That's a good way of putting it, actually.
Yeah.
When you add speakers, it's like, they're bear hugging each other. Yeah.
The Big Baby just has a lot more like clarity in it as well, I feel, compared to the compact and the mini.
So we're running these tweeter versions, tweeters all the way up. So high frequency control all the way up. These four have the same tweeter. This one has a much larger tweeter, large compression driver and horn. It's very clean. I mean, these are great tweeters compared to what you'll generally find in bass cabs, but this is kind of in another level. And I've actually seen that our 12XM's proprietary, and so is our 10CR. They are custom made to our design by Eminence. They're both really unique, special speakers. There's nothing else like them out there. But these others, the tweeters, are off-the-shelf designs. We've just chosen something really good. And I've seen hardcore DIY hi-fi enthusiasts building really, really expensive fancy hi-fi systems and using that compression driver and horn.
Right.
It's really clean and clear and lovely. We use it in our PA speakers that are lurking up here, so they're bare-faced home PA system, not for sale to anyone else. But it fills the room nicely, doesn't it? There's a sort of lightness and detail.
Yeah.
The thing I've noticed when I was playing through these when we were setting up stuff is this has the deepest, the Big Baby's deep and big sounding, and when you go to the Super Compact, I feel it's got a bit more thump to it, and when you go to the Super Mini, it sounds thicker, almost louder in the lows, but not as deep. So they kind of, it's like the low frequencies are sort of you're trading off the deeper lows for a bit more upper bass.
Yeah.
and that's what happens as the enclosure gets smaller and the tuning changes. The 10CRs, they don't change in that way, they just get fatter if you are going from 1 to 2 drivers. And we make bigger than ones of these, so there's the 310, the 410, the 610 and the 810. And obviously you can stack these up, and going from a big baby 3 to 2 big baby 3s is quite thunderous and epic. But we're trying to show you what you can do with small cabs. We rate this at 800 watts power handling, so 800 watts into 8 ohms, 600, 600, 500, 250. However, if you're running your amp clean, you're not doing dirty sounds, a bit of overdrive but nothing particularly dirty, I'm comfortable with you using an amp up to 500 watts into a 110 or up to 800 watts into a 210, because you will hear the driver complaining if you push it too hard. Once in a blue moon someone manages to toast one and tear one to pieces, but it's a rare thing, and it requires either really annoying bandmates making you not hear yourself, or a degree of deafness, or a bit of both.
They come hand in hand usually.
Do you want to play some bass?
Sure.
So, we've swapped instruments, or swapped humans or whatever. So now we're going to try them with the tweeters off. So essentially this is what these models would sound like if they were the non-T version, so Super Compact, Super Mini, 210 and 110. Another thing, the 210S switchable impedance, so you can switch it between 4 and 12 ohm. We now also offer an 8 ohm non-switchable one, so just bear that in mind for how you're planning rigs and what you're pairing things with. 110.
110.
It is so much easier
when you're down low.
Yeah, I can hear it all, and I'm not concentrating on not messing up. So what I really heard was the very obvious, you go from the 10CRs to the 12XNs and it all just gets cleaner and tidier and faster and more immediate.
Those two?
Yeah, so this, it's almost like you get more low mids and MIDI sort of stuff from a Super Mini, and a bit less but more detail from the Super Compact, and a bit less still but more detail. It's like that as you go from the smaller to the larger 12XN cabs, the sound is opening out. Mm-hmm. You may be wondering why on earth we would make 3 different 1x12 cabs. It is a bit confusing. There's a bit of historical reasoning behind it, but actually how I've come to understand it is the big baby is what you do if you want to make a bare-faced cab, or any bass cab, that's as clean and accurate as possible. Goes low, goes high, does everything, no messing. It's just your sound through massive studio monitors or a big PA system. The Super Compact is how you make the best possible conventional sounding bass cab. So it doesn't go as deep. It's not quite as perfect in the mids and highs. It just sounds like a great bass cab. Yeah. But better, and it's lighter and it's got more output for its size. And the upside of that is you end up with a cab that is significantly smaller and lighter than the Big Baby 3. I mean, the Big Baby 3 is wider, isn't it? It's wider and deeper. They're the same height, but it's quite ergonomic to carry. I mean, they're all designed to be easy to carry. And then the Super Mini is what happens if you take this amazing 12XN driver and squeeze it into the smallest cab possible without messing up its sound.
Yeah.
So it's the compromise you get. We have quite a lot of people buying 2 of these. So great combinations. Super Mini, Super Compact. You can tweeter or not, it doesn't really matter. Super Mini and Big Baby 3. That's really popular, Super Mini plus Big Baby 3, because that becomes your big gig cab. That, particularly if you play double bass and bass guitar, that's the one you use with the double bass because it's just easier to carry. Even if the sound's a bit better, it's just more hassle to move. And then stack the pair, and it's great. We generally don't seem to find the Super Compact and the Big Baby get on so well. There's something happening in the lows where they don't add as beneficially as you'd normally expect, so I generally don't recommend pairing those. We also do a short wide version of the Super Compact that we sell a handful of called the Super Third, which is designed for stacking on our Super Twin and looking cool, but otherwise it sounds identical to the Super Compact. It's just a less convenient shape for a solo cab.
Yeah.
Shall I play some dirt through the Stingray?
Yes.
Right, so I've got the Stingray, got the machinist pedal down here doing lots of dirt, and we're running the tweeters at halfway. In my band I don't have guitarists, so I end up running these quite gnarly sounds with the tweeters higher up than that, simply to fill the space and give the vocalist something to hook onto. But yeah, hopefully I can play this all right. Cool.
Yeah, that was good.
You can hear a lot of detail.
Yeah.
So that was fuzz and distortion with parallel clean, then fuzz and clean, and then just clean on its own. By the way, we're running through actually one of our Activire guitar amp modules, which is essentially a clean, flat response preamp power amp solution, which at these sort of volume levels that we're running in here is 200 watts. It's plenty of power for this demo without settling everything else rattling in the room. But yeah, so there's no EQ. So if you listen to this and think it doesn't sound fat enough,
yeah,
there's lots of fatness available, there's lots of depth available, and obviously we do have the limitations of rooms and mics and so on and so forth. Yeah, well, consistent theme, isn't there?
Yeah, again, just it's especially these two, again, the compact and the mini, I was really enjoying flicking between those two, just hearing the like, it's slightly subtle, but also it's really not as well.
I think it's one of those differences that if it was any other instrument,
yeah,
it wouldn't be. It would be so subtle. But because what happens in bass guitar in that 50 to 200 hertz realm
yeah,
is so kind of mission critical, especially once you're in a mix and everyone else is masking you, that the different ways they respond, you know. Bear in mind, this can be adjusted with EQ to quite a degree, and other things. But yeah, that your starting point, this essentially sounds thicker.
Yes.
And this sounds bigger, deep, fatter, thumpier.
A bit, yeah. Again, it's just the clarity as you go across them.
Yeah.
It just grows. It's like expanding almost.
Yeah. And I think it's the lows start to claim their own space away from the low mids.
Yeah.
I notice an interesting thing I've noticed with the Stingray versus the Jack Cassidy is that when I'm playing chordal stuff, which I do a lot, on the Stingray I hear all the strings separately, and on the Jack Cassidy I just hear this lovely big note, and it's a lovely big chord, but it is one thing all blended together much more. And I feel that's the same sort of thing you get when you go across these, that the 210 particularly, it's just a big note.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, big woomph. And then you go that way and it opens out and it's like you hear all the little details within the note, all the harmonics of it, all the growl, the grind, the finger on string, stuff like that. Well, I think that's been quite interesting. Maybe you do too. I think we should probably stop there. But as I said at the start, we have people using these all over the world in every genre, all sorts of bands.
Yeah.
Obviously, these are smaller cabs, but you can play surprisingly loud gigs with them. Compare them to a lot of other decent cabs, and they're like 50% more or twice as much, you know, especially if you've got a powerful amp. We've got people using them with lightweight Class D, etc. amps. We've got people using them with valve amps.
Yeah.
Got all sorts of things. And these are all steel grill examples, and they're all black, but you can have all of them with cloth grills as an option. With the cloth grills, we also offer customization, so you can have different types of cloth. And with the Tolex too, down here, you can have different colours of Tolex, or you could have them painted to match these.
Okay. Different baffles.
And the painted baffles, which are so obvious I didn't mention them. Yes, thank you, James. Yeah, the baffles are normally black, so the painted baffles is a customization, which we just thought was quite fun to have on the demo cab. So baffles are normally black, like that. Yeah. Thank you. We've been Alex and James, lurking down there, and we shall do more of this next time. Farewell.